remember the first time I stuck my thumb out on the side of an empty highway. It was late afternoon. The sun was bleeding into the horizon, and the endless road stretched before me like some kind of trap. I told myself it would be fine. People hitchhiked all the time back then. But as the minutes ticked by and fewer cars passed, I started to regret every decision that had led me there. Finally, an old brown pickup truck slowed down. The driver rolled the window down, revealing a man in his 50s with a gray beard and a strange, crooked smile. He asked where I was headed. I told him just anywhere, along the main road. He chuckled, a deep sound that didn't feel right, and motioned for me to hop in. The interior of the truck smelled of gasoline and something metallic. I tried not to breathe too deeply as I shut the heavy door behind me. There were fast food wrappers on the floor, empty beer cans rattling when he shifted gears, and on the dashboard, a hunting knife, not hidden, not put away, just lying there, gleaming in the fading sunlight. He noticed me staring. Without looking away from the road, he said, almost too casually, "Don't worry about that. It's just for protection. You never know what kind of people you'll meet out here." The words cut deeper than the blade could. I nodded silently, but deep down, I wasn't sure if he was warning me or himself. The truck rumbled along the cracked highway, each bump making the knife on the dashboard shift slightly, catching the fading light. I kept my eyes on the passing trees, anything to avoid staring at the man's crooked grin. He hadn't stopped talking since I got in. He asked where I was from, if I had family, if anyone was expecting me. Each question felt less like small talk and more like an interrogation. When I hesitated, his grin widened, as if my uncertainty entertained him. Then he started telling me about picking up other hitchhikers. His voice lowered, almost conspiratorial, like he was sharing secrets with me. He described one guy who never made it to his destination, and laughed in a way that made my stomach twist. I forced a laugh too, pretending it was just a dark joke. But in my head, alarms were screaming. I noticed his hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, veins bulging. This wasn't just a weird old man. There was something simmering under the surface. When I asked politely if he could drop me off at the next gas station, his expression changed instantly. The smile collapsed into a frown. His eyes darted to the rearview mirror, then back to me. "We'll stop when I say we stop," he muttered. My throat went dry. The road ahead stretched endlessly, and I realized I had no idea where he was taking me. The sun had nearly vanished when the truck suddenly veered off the highway onto a narrow dirt road. My pulse spiked instantly. I hadn't seen a gas station or even another car for miles, and now he was taking us deeper into nowhere. I tried to stay calm, forcing my voice steady. "Hey, I thought we were sticking to the main road." He didn't answer at first. His jaw tightened, and he leaned forward in his seat as if he hadn't heard me. Then, finally, he said, "Shortcut." But this wasn't a shortcut. The dirt road twisted through dense woods, branches scraping against the sides of the truck. My gut told me everything about this was wrong. I could barely see through the windshield, but I noticed something in the passenger side door pocket, a length of rope coiled neatly, and duct tape. My stomach dropped. I turned my head, pretending to look out the window, but I was actually scanning the ground, the trees, anything. If I had to jump out, I needed to know what I'd land in. The truck jolted hard, and my knee hit the glove box, popping it open. Inside were maps, an old flashlight, and more knives. The man's head snapped toward me. His eyes gleamed in the dim light. "Close it," he said flatly. I swallowed hard and pushed the glove box shut. My hands were trembling. That was the moment I realized this ride wasn't about getting me somewhere. It was about where he wanted me to end up. The dirt road narrowed until the trees seemed to close in on both sides, branches scraping like nails across the truck's metal skin. My heartbeat was so loud, I was sure he could hear it. I finally worked up the courage to ask, "Where exactly are we going?" This time, he grinned again, only now it looked hungrier. "Don't worry. I got a place where you can rest. You'll be safe there." The way he said safe made my skin crawl. I shifted in my seat, testing the handle on the passenger door. It rattled, but didn't budge. Locked. He must have noticed. His eyes flicked to my hand, then back to the road. Without saying a word, he reached over and turned up the radio. Static-filled country music spilled from the speakers, drowning out the silence, but doing nothing to drown out my panic. Then, as we rounded a curve, I saw it. A clearing up ahead. There was no house, no gas station, just an old, half-collapsed barn, sitting alone in the middle of the woods. The truck slowed, tires crunching over gravel as he steered straight toward it. My mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed that if I let him take me inside that barn, I wouldn't be walking back out. I glanced at the knife still on the dashboard, then at the window. The glass was cracked near the edge. My only chance might be to break it and run. I took a deep breath, preparing myself. The truck came to a stop, the engine humming softly in the growing darkness. "End of the line," he muttered, his hand moving toward the knife. That was it. I had to make a move. My hand shot to the cracked window, slamming my elbow against it once, twice. The glass splintered, but not enough. He laughed low, like he was enjoying my panic. "You don't need to do that," he said calmly, fingers curling tighter around the knife's handle. "You'll like it inside." Inside. The word echoed in my head like a death sentence. With all the strength I had, I slammed my shoulder into the glass. It shattered, exploding outward in a spray of shards. Cold night air rushed in. He roared, lunging toward me, the knife flashing. I didn't think. I just launched myself through the broken window, glass tearing into my jacket and skin as I tumbled into the dirt outside. Pain burned across my arms, but adrenaline drowned it out. I scrambled to my feet and bolted for the tree line. Behind me, the truck door slammed, his heavy boots hitting the ground. "Get back here," he bellowed, his voice booming through the clearing. Branches whipped against my face as I tore into the woods. My lungs burned, every step crunching leaves and twigs, but I didn't dare stop. Then I heard it, the pounding of boots chasing me, closer than I expected. He was fast, too fast. I ducked behind a fallen log, pressing myself flat against the damp earth, trying not to breathe. His footsteps thundered past, snapping branches, then paused. Silence. My heart hammered so loud I thought it would give me away. Then, from just a few feet away, his voice. "I can hear you breathing." Every instinct in me screamed to run, but I stayed perfectly still, face pressed to the damp forest floor. My lungs burned from holding my breath. His boots crunched slowly over leaves, circling. He was trying to flush me out, like prey. "You think you can hide from me?" he whispered, voice low, almost playful. "I always find what's mine." I clenched my fists in the dirt, forcing myself not to move. He was so close, I could smell him. A sharp mix of sweat, gasoline, and something metallic. Then a twig snapped just inches from my hiding spot. I thought it was over. His shadow fell across the log, blotting out the moonlight. I couldn't take it anymore. I bolted. I exploded from behind the log, sprinting blindly through the trees. He roared and gave chase, crashing after me. Branches clawed at my clothes, mud sucking at my shoes, but I pushed harder, lungs screaming. I spotted a faint glimmer of light through the trees. Headlights. A road. Civilization. "Help!" I screamed, my voice raw. I burst out of the tree line, nearly stumbling onto the asphalt. A car was approaching, its headlights blinding. I waved frantically, blood streaking down my arm from the glass cuts. The driver slammed on the brakes, tires screeching. The car door opened. "Oh my God, are you okay?" a woman shouted. But before I could answer, the man's voice thundered from the woods behind me. "He's mine." The woman froze at the sound of his voice. Her eyes darted past me, into the darkness where he was emerging from the tree line, his silhouette huge against the headlights. "Get in the car. Now," she screamed. I stumbled toward the passenger door, hands trembling as I yanked it open. I threw myself inside, slamming the lockdown just as the man lunged from the shadows. His hands slapped against the glass with a sickening thud. His face pressed to the window, eyes wild, teeth bared. "Open it!" he bellowed, shaking the handle violently. The woman floored the gas pedal, the car lurching forward. He stumbled, then chased us, running down the middle of the road like some kind of nightmare, illuminated in the red glow of the taillights. For a terrifying moment, it looked like he might actually keep up, his figure pounding after us in the rearview mirror. "Who the hell is that?" the woman gasped, white-knuckling the steering wheel. I could barely form words. "He picked me up, hitchhiking. He's not right in the head. Please, just don't stop." The speedometer climbed. 40, 50, 60. The man grew smaller and smaller in the mirror, until finally he disappeared into the night. But the fear didn't fade. My body wouldn't stop shaking. My ears still rang with his voice. "He's mine." The woman didn't slow down for miles. The speedometer held steady at 70, her hands gripping the wheel so tight her knuckles looked bone white. Finally, when the road bent into a long stretch of empty highway, she exhaled shakily and loosened her grip just a little. "Okay," she whispered. "He's gone. You're safe now." I wanted to believe her, but the image of his face pressed against the window was burned into my mind. The way his eyes locked on mine, as if I wasn't just a stranger to him, but prey he'd already claimed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. My hands were still shaking when I pulled it out. No signal, just a single corrupted notification flashing on the screen, like a glitch. 3 words. "He's still here." I blinked, staring at the message. My heart jumped to my throat. Did you text me?" I asked the woman, my voice trembling. She glanced over, confused. "What? Number? Why?" I turned the screen toward her, but the notification was gone. Just an empty lock screen, her face paled anyway. "Listen," she said, her voice lowering to a near whisper. You need to tell me everything about him. Right now. So I told her. From the moment he picked me up, the way he drove in silence, the strange detours, the things he said. She listened without interrupting, her eyes fixed on the road. And when I was done, she whispered almost to herself, "That sounds like the man they never caught." I froze. "What man?" Her hands tightened again on the wheel. There was a string of disappearances along this highway, all hitchhikers. They think he's been hunting them for years. The night stretched endlessly ahead of us, the highway cutting through the dark like a vein. The woman hadn't spoken in minutes, and the silence was starting to feel unbearable. Finally, I asked, "You said they never caught him. How do you know so much about it?" She didn't answer right away. Her jaw tightened. "Because I was almost one of them," she finally whispered. My stomach dropped. She told me about a night 5 years ago, how she'd been driving this same stretch of road when she saw a hitchhiker standing alone under a flickering street lamp. He looked normal enough, polite, even charming. She let him in. By the time she realized he wasn't right, it was too late. He started humming an old lullaby in the passenger seat, smiling at her like he knew every secret she'd ever tried to hide. She managed to escape only because a trucker stopped at a gas station and intervened. And she swore. The face I described, the way he acted, the voice, that was him. Before I could respond, headlights flared in the rearview mirror. A car was approaching fast. Too fast. "Don't look back," she whispered, pressing harder on the gas. But I couldn't help it. My eyes flicked to the mirror. The car behind us swerved violently, from lane to lane, gaining on us. And in that split second, when its headlights caught his face through the windshield, I felt my blood run cold. It was him, the hitchhiker. He was driving the car behind us. The woman's hands trembled as she gripped the wheel. The car behind us kept closing in, its headlights flooding the interior of our car with blinding white. My chest felt like it was being crushed. "He's not going to stop," she muttered, voice breaking. The roar of his engine grew louder as he pulled up beside us, swerving dangerously close. For a brief second, our windows aligned. I saw him clearly this time. His mouth twisted into a smile, slow and deliberate. His lips formed the words, "You can't run." Then he rammed us. The impact threw me against the door. Metal shrieked. Tires screamed against the asphalt as the woman fought to keep control. "Hold on," she cried, jerking the wheel. We swerved violently onto a side road, a narrow, tree-lined stretch of dirt. The car behind us followed instantly, headlights cutting through the dust. "Why won't he stop?" I screamed. The woman didn't answer. Her face was set with grim determination. She floored the gas, the car bouncing and rattling as branches scraped against the sides. And then, suddenly, another pair of headlights appeared ahead of us. A massive 18-wheeler barreled down the dirt road, horn blaring. "Doc!" she screamed. She jerked the wheel, barely missing the truck as it thundered past. The hitchhiker's car wasn't so lucky. The crash was deafening. His vehicle slammed head-on into the truck with a burst of fire and twisting steel. The explosion lit up the trees around us like daylight. We skidded to a stop, both of us gasping, staring at the inferno behind. For a moment, I thought it was over. But then, through the flames, I saw a figure stumble out, burned, broken, yet somehow still walking. His eyes glowed with that same manic fury as he staggered toward us. The woman slammed her foot on the gas, tires spitting dirt as we tore back onto the highway, leaving the nightmare behind. When I finally dared to look back, the flames had swallowed him whole, or maybe he had simply vanished. I'll never know. But even now, years later, whenever I drive that stretch of road, I swear I can still hear it, faint, carried on the wind, that lullaby